Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld Edition, the unofficial podcast companion piece for the hit HBO series Westworld. I am one of your three co-hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Gene the Dragon Lyons.
I don't like to complain.
Yes, you do. And this is our Instacast episode where we look back on this week's episode of Westworld and provide our immediate reactions, thoughts, and analysis. Gentlemen, this week's episode was entitled, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, Virtù e Fortuna? Is that correct, Gene?
I only took 1 year of Latin my sophomore year at Dobson High School, but based on that 1 year of Latin, you are spot on, Raj.
Got it. If you've never listened to the podcast before, this is our Instacast episode where we release our immediate thoughts after we watch the episode of Westworld as it airs on Eastern Standard Time here in America. But if you've never listened to the podcast before, we do a deep dive episode, which we record on Mondays and release on Tuesdays. And then we do a fan email and response episode that we release every Friday called the Westworld Telegraph, where we foster your opinions and your theories. And we collect them all and we put them all on our website, shatontv.com. You can also leave us a voicemail, 914-719-SHAT. Be sure to follow us everywhere you get your fine podcasts and check out our sister podcast, shatthemovies.com, where we review 80s and 90s movies. That being said, guys, what did you think of episode 3, Virtù e Fortuna?
I mean, I know we're only 3 episodes in, so it's hard to rank them, but right now, I don't think anything can touch episode 2, Reunion. That was the best episode of Westworld I've seen so far, but this was a very strong one. I liked it better than the first one. Lots of action, lots of questions answered. I enjoyed it.
It was the first one that I wasn't clearly like, yes, this is awesome, Westworld is back. I need to watch it again. For me, it seemed a bit hectic. I understand they wanted to advance some of the plot, but it just seemed to be full steam ahead. Whereas in the past, stuff was more deliberate, thought out. It was a little slower pace. I think it's great. There was just so much to digest, and I've never found myself stopping so much to rewind and be like, okay, what was said? What was said?
Yeah, I got to agree with you. Of the 3 episodes of season 2 so far, this was my least favorite. Now, again, we're so early on, and I'm not saying that I hated the episode. I'm just saying that even Breaking Bad had some episodes where I was like, yeah, that was good. You know, that was good. They advanced the story. Did you guys get the same feeling that they just ended the episode? Like you were wanting more?
Well, that's good. They should leave you wanting more. You don't want to end the episode going, fuck, I'm glad that was over.
Well, I have a little bit of problem with the ending too, with the samurai coming. It's a little hacky in my opinion.
It's a little cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And we've said before that Westworld is above having cliffhangers, and they generally are. Here's the thing, though. Look at all this that this episode gave us. It gave us an introduction to 1, possibly 2 new worlds. It showed us what the perimeters look like, the barriers between the worlds. Mm-hmm. It answered questions about what was going on. It gave us battle scene, like a full-scale battle scene. I mean, not Game of Thrones level, but it was good. I mean, I wouldn't turn my nose up at it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just feel, and we'll get into it, I felt that there were some tropes that were used a little bit more than what I expect out of this show. That being said, Gene, what topics are we going to be discussing on tonight's Instacast that we may go into deeper during our deep dive?
Yeah, again, if we don't go deep enough into something, which is a complaint we hear quite often, wink, wink, make sure to listen on Tuesday. We're just going to rip through these. This is basically an overview, our thoughts as we just watched the episode. So first we're going to talk about the episode title, what it means, and some songs that you might have heard during the episode. The revelation of the new park or parks, what that's all about. Connecting threads. What we saw between episode 1 and episode 2 is kind of brought together by episode 3, and what are some of those connecting threads? Also, we talked about rules before in Westworld, some new rules to ponder, why things are the way they are in Westworld, some of the rules that we have to follow going forward. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about Peter Abernathy and what his reintroduction to the series means. And a little bit about our favorite scenes of this episode. There were some of scenes that seemed directly intended to make the fans smile, and we'll talk about whether they had a good impact on us.
Well, immediately diving into the episode title and songs, as I mentioned before, the title was Virtù e Fortuna. That is a Latin phrase. Is that correct, Gene?
That is correct, Raj. It is Latin.
And it's based on from my research, because I did not take Latin at Dobson High, nor did they even offer Latin in Florida. This is a Machiavelli reference, correct?
Right. So this comes back from Machiavellian political theory. This is a fairly basic one. So again, we've seen that Westworld, although they will go deep sometimes they'll throw us some easy bones here. Again, religious references. And in this case, Machiavelli is fairly accessible. And this is one of the more accessible Machiavellian principles from The Prince.
It's based on how to run an autocratic government, right? We're going to lead by power instead of by fortune, so to speak, out of our control.
Yeah, so the Virtù part encourages ruthlessness when required, but also good when necessary or when permissible. And the idea of the Virtù part is to control everything you can control, so that the Fortuna part, the uncontrollable, is minimized. That's the entire idea.
You know, the discussion right now sparked me thinking about one of the final scenes in the episode, the test that Dolores gives Teddy, where she says, take this dog out back and shoot him. This is a perfect example of Dolores putting forward a test, that the title could mean that scene. Use force only when necessary. She's been preaching. We all are led to believe that she was disappointed in Teddy, but after reading this, if Dolores is our leader following this Machiavellian principle, that could have been a test that Teddy passed.
And really, when you look at the idea that I've expressed before in this season about predictive analytics, this could also be a key there, where when you are able to predict based on past data, that is your virtue, right? You are minimizing what is fortune. But there is always the concept of free will, always the outlier. And the question is, will there ever be a point where everything is predictable, or will free will always be a part of life? Will luck always be there?
Totally agree. And Dolores shows us, as a ruler, she can't lead Teddy by force. She already sees that he's going against that. And Dolores shows that dichotomy, that she always sees the beauty and the splendor in the world, but she's also leading to great destruction. And I think that these concepts also extend to free will, which is one of the basic plots and backbones of the stories. Can a person overcome the circumstances set before them? You know, or is someone, and like the host, predetermined to fulfill their fate? You know, in other words, can a person overcome their destiny? Or is it something that the sheer will can overcome?
Now, certainly I think we're all kind of agreeing that the Virtù, the Machiavellian leader, is Dolores. Could the Fortuna part be the Maeve storyline, where we see, and we're going to talk about some of her new limitations on her power, and she may have to rely on more chance than what Dolores' strategy is?
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea there, Raj. Maeve, we've said previously, is the embodiment this season of free will, or at least that's what we're led to believe. And so it would, you know, in a park where everything, even it seems down to wildlife and weather, is controlled, the closest thing to luck or to chance is Maeve.
I think it may also even apply to the way that Ford originally envisioned this park, and maybe even what Delos has on top of Ford. So I think there's different layers, just like we expect out of a show like Westworld. For fans who are constantly looking for songs on a player piano, they didn't get one on a piano this episode, but they did get it on a different instrument. Big D, what was that?
So yes, the song was Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes. But there is something that I learned in researching another point here that kind of tied it together, because a lot of times we wonder, why do they put the song in there? I was trying to figure out, because we learned for the first time that the Ghost Nation speaks Lakota. So in researching Lakota, I learned that according to some historical sources, the Lakota were at one point in their history part of a confederation of 7 related Sioux tribes. So I think the song is tying to the importance of Ghost Nation, and they wouldn't have thrown that little tidbit on subtitles that they're speaking Lakota for the first time in, 13 episodes?
I'm glad you brought that up, Big D, because I was racking my brain trying to figure out what Seven Nation Army had to do with this. Now, Seven Nation Army has been adopted by a lot of sports fans, especially Italian soccer fans, and fans of all soccer teams. They'll chant, players' names to Seven Nation Army, but the actual song is just about gossip. Jack White wrote it about just people gossiping about him and Meg from the White Stripes. And so I was like, what the hell does this have to do with anything?
Okay, well, gossip spreads, correct? That's how information is spread throughout the world. What if the gossip is this virus that we see has spread to other worlds and other lands that we're introduced to?
Every time you go on these rants, Roger, I just imagine Charlie Day with like when he's smoking the cigarette and pointing to the bulletin board. God damn.
At least I'm sober this episode. And again, I apologize for people who had to sit through, and you, Gene, personally, for having to edit, I think, 40 minutes off of that episode. Thank God.
Actually, one of my friends draw it was like a bell curve of your clarity. It was like low, and then you actually kind of like had a moment of clarity toward the middle of the episode, and then it dropped precipitously. And then the outro is just like, what the hell was that?
I'm basically the laugher curve of this podcast. Well, talking about the new parks, we were introduced to at least two of them. This got a little bit long in the tooth for me. Now, again, Big D and I have seen the original movie Westworld, where there are different storylines in Roman world and in medieval world. We did not see Roman world or medieval world. What were the worlds that we were introduced to?
I think it was India world or something of the.
I'm calling it the Splendors of India world.
Splendors of India. But this show, to show you what it does, how it fucks with you, I'm always looking for like, okay, what time frame is this? What are we looking at? I had convinced myself in the first couple minutes that the woman we were seeing was Teresa Cullen. Even down to, I was like, okay, what cigarettes is she smoking? She's holding it just like her. Is this a flashback? And thank God they kind of showed me right away that it wasn't. By the reveal that this is the same timeline, that is the tiger that we find dead downriver. We now know that the tiger didn't, find his way downriver, that he was killed by the fall into the water, and that some way that water is going to make its way down to the Westworld part of the park.
Guys, this just in, you're going to love this. So the park that they were in, that we were just talking about, the Splendors of India park, is Park 6. You know what its official title is?
What's the official title?
The Raj.
No, it's not.
The Raj?
It is R-A-J, The Raj.
Oh, wow. That's some t-shirt ideas right there.
Those questions about HBO hiring us might not be so far off base. Maybe this is a call out. Maybe this is HBO talking to us. They named a park after you, Raj.
Here's my problem with these new worlds. Did you laugh at like the border? Like when she's like, here's the voice overhanging like on a loudspeaker that says, you're exiting the customer experience. You're exiting the customer experience. Go back. And then there's no fence. There's no anything. It's just like a laser line. And it just seemed a little hokey to me that people could actually genuinely reach the end of a park.
Yeah, but there was the important part of there was it was showing that there was a breakdown. Like that basically this security feature was not working properly. That laser, I imagine it was supposed to be sort of a Running Man thing where like if anything crossed that line, its head would explode or something like that, intended not to hurt guests. This seems like a huge liability as far as like a guest being able to injure herself.
Yeah. I got to agree with Raj here. I worked at Animal Kingdom in Disney World down here in Orlando. When you're on the safari, they have what looks like natural landforms, but they're actually designed in a way to keep the animals separated and to keep the animals from getting out of their containment. It's not a fence. It's not a wall. You just looks like it's a cliff. They could have done this in the park, but whatever. I can't complain that much.
The one thing that I do like, though, is that the virus, like gossip, has spread across all the parks. We did receive confirmation that in the Raj, there's a host that does attack, not young Teresa Cullen. We don't know her name, right? We don't know her name, so it's okay for me to call her not young Teresa Cullen?
Ghost Nation bait? I don't know what they're going to do with her.
So, I mean, this has implications through the series.
A question we've always had is, how much control do the park operators have over things like the weather? They make a comment. Sizemore is the only one who complains, and also Felix and Sylvester, about the temperature outside. So he makes a comment that he says, we're near the north edge of the park, near the Klondike narrative, 3 or 4 sectors east of the homestead. There's no physical way that you could normally drop the temperature from the homestead, which is 85, 90 degrees, to sub-freezing and snowing if there wasn't some artificial control of weather.
Well, you could have it. In a sense, I guess you could have it with terraforming if you had an incredible increase in altitude. But again, it's I don't know. That's it seems more likely that they have weather control.
Remember, it was walking distance.
You've never lived in Arizona.
Yeah, but they also popped up. They went underground and then popped up. So how far underground did they walk? And then also on top of the land, Sizemore does seem lost. So it makes sense of, he ends up in Shogun World. But again, there's a subset of Westworld fans, not ours, but there are some that still believe that Westworld is on a different planet or maybe on the moon. They're the flat earthers, if you will, of Westworld fans. The fact that they can control weather and control terraforming, I think, is going to give it's going to feed those people the wrong ideas. Because I don't believe that we're on a different planet or the moon.
Right. I mean, right now we can seed clouds, and we can control different aspects of weather on a limited scale. You can imagine in the future, if we've got AI to this level, it probably has some sort of control over weather too.
God, Roger, I'm surprised you skipped the Truman Show. We had people writing in thinking it's a dome. They're going to take this as confirmation.
Well, the other thing that came out of this scene, which I do think is important, Big D, you pointed out to me, which I didn't catch the first time. The area that not young Teresa Cullen is walking over seems to be some sort of dam. Could this be the source of the flood that we see in episode 1?
I think it makes logical sense. The water wasn't there, and then all of a sudden there's a large body. It would make logical sense if somebody either blows the dam up or just opens up the floodgates.
So now we're starting to see the connecting threads across the different episodes. What other things did we see in this episode that have started to connect what we've seen in season 1 and what we've seen in the first 2 episodes thus far?
So we mentioned before that the tiger that was on shore, we've seen it on multiple episodes now. And in the trailer, it seems to be the same tiger that jumped and tackled the woman, which, by the way, theories are already emerging that woman is Emily, so William's daughter, which would make sense in the way she approaches the world, the park. And also would make sense as to why she's not named. So something to think about as we go into the deep dive.
I like it.
I like that.
Another cool thing we got an answer to a question was about Rebus. In the second episode, we questioned why is Rebus all of a sudden defending a female host. We now understand why. It was Bernard's tactic to get him. They turned him into what? The most virtuous gunslinger in the West to free Peter Abernathy. It was great to watch him running through the woods like, I will guard you, my lady, and chasing that woman up the hill. I liked it. Good way to answer the question.
This is Westworld at its best. The Rebus character was in the background of a Bernard scene in episode 1. Yep. And it was almost like they're like an Easter egg. And now they explain it. This is Westworld at its best. And this is what I like. But we are seeing more things talking about Bernard. We are seeing more things that have happened with Bernard, including more credence, in my opinion, that Bernard does equal Teddy.
Explain, Roger.
Okay. All right. So number one, the easy, let's just start with the low-hanging fruit. Number one, you see Bernard in timeline A still wearing his glasses. In timeline B, he's not wearing his glasses, and he is dressed very similarly to Teddy. Additionally, you see that Clementine box him over the head as he's starting to glitch out, right? The repaired Bernard, the one with the scar on his head, she knocks him out just as he's like glitching out. And you see her drag him off, or you assume she's going to drag him off somewhere. That could be the place where they're going to do the body swapping. They're going to swap the IMDs.
No, I was just saying my only problem with that is that Dolores still wants Bernard to try to fix her father. So we're guessing maybe they're going to get Peter Abernathy back, and at that point you'd need Bernard to hopefully fix him up. It wouldn't be a good time to put Teddy in there.
Well, I mean, again, the B equals T is still just a theory. I'm not saying I'm completely right, but I'm just saying that there was some evidence that pointed towards that in this episode. Also related to Bernard and theories, Big D, the Bernard is based on Arnold, and Arnold was just AI. Theories may have been discredited based on a line from Dolores.
Okay, discredited is really strong. We can't trust everybody on scene. And yes, Dolores did say Arnold was a man. She said, how much of him still remains in you, that you are based on his character, Bernard. A couple little dents in the armor with that, but I'm not taking it as completely ruining my theory.
Bernard, I think he does respond to that he was given a narrative and a backstory just like her. So theoretically, it could just be a backstory that was fed into her memories. Same with him. So again, I'm not completely discounting the theory, but you're right. There are a couple arrows that are stuck in our armor. What else did we find out?
A big one we questioned, and it was again another throwaway quick moment from episode 2. Why can't the humans detect human from host? And we now see that they actually do have that little red like taser device.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you have to stick it right up to the back of the neck to be able to identify. So we get a definitive answer that Charlotte Hale is human at this point, at least, and they can differentiate characters. They can differentiate host from human.
Yeah, we also see multiple contact points now between Charlotte and Bernard, which is, again, reinforcing this Bernard loop theory, right? So we've seen Charlotte with Bernard in the bunker. Charlotte again runs into Bernard as their, or is at least in the same time frame as they're raiding, Fort of Forlorn Hope. So we see that Bernard and Charlotte have had contact multiple times during this 11 or 12 day spread that we're talking about in season 2 so far. So that's really important to note.
Raj, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Oh God. Okay, when they have that meeting again with the QA force, Charlotte recognizes Bernard like, "Oh shit, you survived. I didn't think." Bernard looks at her like, "What are you talking about?" So I think you could be onto something here.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and watch the episode. We'll talk about this definitely in the deep dive.
Something's happened to Bernard in between those.
Okay, there's I can't even believe I have to explain this part. Guys, it doesn't mean he was swapped. It means that if he's on this loop, he's being wiped. Like, that's the whole point. Is the whole theory of Bernard being on a loop, showing up on the beach over and over again, being walked through the whole thing, is that he's being wiped and sent through the loop again and again and again to get information. So it would make sense that she would recognize that she's seen him before, and he would not recognize her. It doesn't mean he's Teddy.
I didn't think that Bernard, the Bernard that we see show up with Charlotte Hale, I didn't think that was the Hope Forlorn time frame. I thought that was the time frame after the QA boys show Bernard the Bengal tiger and show him the sea, and then they loop back around and go underground, and that's where they see Charlotte. That's what I thought was happening there. But again, I could be wrong. I got to go watch the deep dive again. If you know the answer, write in hosts@shatontv.com. Talk about connecting theories. We're also reintroduced to my favorite two characters, the misadventures of Felix and Sylvester. They're alive, guys.
I wasn't as excited as I was to see Armistice with the flamethrower. I'm embarrassed to say I was like, yes, fuck yes, she has a dragon. I was right there with Hector.
Yeah, I was oddly excited. I tempered that excitement very quickly. I was like, oh yeah, it's Armistice. And I was like, I actually clapped a little bit. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is okay, great. So what? What significance does she bring to any of the series other than the fact that she's kind of cool?
Yes, not everything has to be profound. You could see something that's just cool, something that you haven't seen before, something that fires you up.
I like that they're reintroducing characters that we love, but again, it's a little wink, wink, nod, nod back to the audience that really loves these characters, right? And it's like, oh, the gang's all back together, guys.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. It was the same thing with Sylvester and Felix being back. It's like, okay, please make this go somewhere. I hope it's not just that they're there. You know, it's like, oh, it's funny, you know, Sylvester's in another predicament and Felix is sweet.
Yeah.
That seemed a bit forced. And also for me, I always try to look, is what's happening that the characters, what they're doing, is it believable? Sizemore, like trying to provoke Hector and Maeve by, oh, I wrote that for you, Isabel. Like it seemed unrealistic to me that if I was with two artificial intelligent, two hosts that I've watched kill dozens of people, that I would be giving them a reason and reminding them of the horrible things I've done, and possibly just saying, you know what, why are we carrying him around? Let's end him.
Is Sizemore a real person, Big D?
But it doesn't just stop there at the fan service, right? I mean, you see Armistice pull off, deglove her hand, and that's a callback to season 1 when her hand, gets chopped off, and she's also doing it in the same manner that Arnold Schwarzenegger did in Terminator 2 when he shows Sarah Connor, his arm. I'm sorry, not Sarah Connor. He shows it to Miles Dyson. He shows the arm in a very similar manner. It's also like a callback to like Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, right? With the glove and Luke seeing the robot hand. Speaking of Star Wars, there's also another throwaway where Maeve is trying to direct the host, the Lakota tribe, the Ghost Nation, and it's not working. She's almost trying to do the stop. She's doing Jedi mind trick, and it's not working.
Well, I think this kind of is a nice segue for us into our next segment, which is like rules, things that we start to question now that maybe before we thought were written in stone. Maeve, for the first time, we've now seen cannot, her will, she cannot impose it on hosts. Every other host who she's given a verbal, audible command, stop, do this, do that, they do it. So the question here is the Ghost Nation tribe that ignore her orders to stop and let us pass, was that the fact that Maeve could not speak Lakota and that the hosts need to understand the verbal cues that she's saying in the instructions? Or is it that Maeve can't control the Ghost Nation hosts?
Okay, so a couple things here. I don't think that I would build in a safety word if I had to remember every language, right? You would think that it would just be in English, right? It's like banana every time Gene and I hang out. It's our safety word for each other when one of us is going too far.
Banana for scale.
That's right. Could this not just be related to language, but could it be related to Maeve's backstory and the fact that Lakota seems to have power over her, right? Because we've seen in her flashbacks that they come in, they kill seemingly her daughter and herself.
Yeah, I think both are reasonable. Another thing to consider, though, is that Hector also, he doesn't shoot any of them. He shoots the water, he shoots the sky, and he runs. Well, Hector, we know, is proficient with firearms. And he could easily take on 4 people who are just armed with with melee weapons, and yet he doesn't. And so that leads me to believe that either he can't or won't hurt them.
Yeah, I noticed it when they were going down the elevator, and he's shooting like a good 6 to 7 feet in either direction of them. We joked in our first season coverage that maybe they were a benevolent, or they were like a secondary level of protection for the park. Very likely they could be.
Are you saying that the Lakota Nation is Ghost Nation? They are not.
Yes.
Ghost Nation is not the army of masked individuals that's hanging out with Dolores.
No, the actual group of natives, which they call Ghost Nation, which speak Lakota, that they could be. We saw them take Stubbs. We assumed they killed him, but they didn't shoot him, or they didn't hit him with a melee weapon. They just tackled him. Maybe they're protection for the humans in the park.
Why would Dolores be able to kill a Lakota?
I don't know. She seems a little bit broken too.
Okay. We see Dolores is able to shoot Ghost Nation, but Maeve and Hector are not. Okay, these are interesting rules that I think may spark some additional conversation on our deep dive. Also in the episode, there was a phrase related to people not being able to be killed, and this may lend credence to your theory about immortality and what the real purpose of the park is.
Yeah, I'm going to have to research this for the deep dive. I had stated that there's possibility that one of the things that Delos wanted to get out of the park was a way to extend human life, possibly immortality or fake immortality. Dolores, in the conversation with Bernard, is trying to fix her father. She said, "Oh, you've never been out of the park. You haven't seen them." Well, she says, "The world outside there is marked by survival of a kind that refuses to die." It's not that they don't want to die, it's that they don't die. In the natural world, in the real world, 35 years after the park opens, is it possible that not only is all disease has been cured, but for all intents and purposes, the people who are wealthy can afford it will live indefinitely?
But this could also just mean that humans are a plague on the world and kind of refuse to die, no matter how much damage we do to our environment. We're like locusts.
Possible.
So it could just be that humans are a plague and they keep surviving and we need to exterminate them. Or you're right, it could be immortality. Maybe we'll do a little bit more research on this. The thing that I guess bothered me as well about this episode is there's so many escape elevators. I get that the rules of the park would have to make sense that you can enter in and exit out, just like you do at the Magic Kingdom in the tunnels for employees to get into the park. But this is just a little too easy, right?
See, every time that they go up or down, in my head I hear dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun from Mario Brothers. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Right. I hear the theme to Elevator Action.
That was a good game. I love that game.
I mean, to remember that Nolan said the size of the park is 500 square miles. We've seen like 10 elevators. There's not that many.
Yeah, but this park has been littered with elevators. You have to imagine there's an elevator for each sector.
Think of Disney. How many cast member doors were there? There was tons.
So many. Well, talking about our favorite cast members, Louis Hertham, great to see him back.
Oh, he looks tan. He looks rested. He's a good-looking older man.
We were talking about this before we started the Instacast. I felt that his movement from characters to characters as he's glitching out was an exercise and should be taught in masterclass on Facebook of how to do that, how screen actors should be able to effortlessly move from character to character. Gene, you felt that it wasn't as good as I did.
I felt I was in the class watching an actor go, now,
Oh, wow.
now listen, this is how you do it. Now, okay, now don't get me wrong. He did a phenomenal job of it. It didn't take me out of the scene or anything like that. Like Louis Hertham is a very talented actor, one of the more talented actors on Westworld. However, I think that I've seen the act so many times now that it's lost. Season 1, it was breaking my heart, and now it just seemed like. And I don't blame him as an actor. I actually blame the show itself for we get it. Like you don't need to drag that out any longer, unless there were tidbits. And again, Westworld has shown us before. Not to get too cocky, there might have been things in there that we were supposed to capture. So we obviously saw multiple builds there. We saw the professor in there. We saw Peter Abernathy. And then this one that they seem to hack together, which is I got to get to the train guy.
Did you not find that his performance, it evoked an emotional response for you? For me, when he's on the bed and he's becomes Peter Abernathy again, and Dolores and him are connecting, and we see that the love for her father is much like Maeve and her daughter, my guard was down. I got in the moment, and then he'll flip right back to, quoting Shakespeare and being like raving lunatic to where you're afraid. It wasn't just the way he acted. I thought he pulled it off. It was great. I went from loving him to being afraid of him to feeling bad for him, and it pulled it off for me. I had no complaints.
I guess the question I have, why is he glitching out more than an early Windows PC? Is it the encryption, or was it the abuse from the other host, or does he have too much information stored in his host brain?
Remember why he was decommissioned and put in cold storage? He finds the photo of Logan's sister. That caused him to whisper in Dolores' ear and caused him to freak out and revert back to his previous build. So I think he was broken to begin with, and then you just pack his brain to the absolute maximum with that information. And that to me was the most curious thing, was when Bernard is looking at actually what's in his mind. And you're the tech guy among us, Gene. What did we learn about the way they stored the information that was important?
So they mask the information as another character, basically, as a character file. And so once Bernard dug into that, and Bernard said a very curious thing. He said that I can't tell. Like when he was asked what's in there, he's like, I can't tell, which is really interesting. He didn't say like I don't know how or whatever, but that he can't tell. That could be seen different ways. But what you did see on the screen is you saw the one-time use key was flashed on the screen, which is a form of encryption. So for people who aren't familiar with that, basically a lot of people who use VPN or log in remotely for work, I think Raj probably has the same thing. You have a one-time use key, which is basically one data set that will produce a code that you introduce to another data set, and then they know they're on the same page, and then your password will work.
So is the one-time use key now the MacGuffin for season 2? Everyone's going to be searching for this one-time use key?
Yeah, and back in the old days, it would be like on a strip of paper. Now they have like key fobs that you can click and it'll give you a digital key, or you can go to a site. But basically, the way to think about it is just having Abernathy isn't enough. You have to have Abernathy and the key. So there's the second thing you're looking for.
Could the key be Emily, a grown-up Emily?
I think it's Dolores' love.
Because he seemed to not glitch out when he was a Dolores. The bottom line is all these multiple personalities can't stop Peter Abernathy from being captured. This is a jam-packed Instacast. This is longer than what we normally go. Let's end with your favorite scenes from this episode.
I never thought shooting somebody to prove they're human could be sexy. But I think, again, Westworld gives me new insight into my own sexuality. And I was like, oh my God, this is hot. Like she's like he's willing to take a bullet to see if he's human, or to prove that he's human. And, that's a terrifying prospect, because you're trusting in the tech, first of all. And I think had it been after they discovered the massacre in the Raj, he might not have been so willing. Also, again, another thing I loved about this episode, apparently I'm just really into shooting, Dolores taking those bullets for Papa. That was tough. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, again, that leads credence to that she's the key fob. My favorite scene was Zombie Clementine, seeing her, because this show is now Z Nation. It's my favorite zombie show. And Clementine is head zombie. I really like seeing her. I like seeing the powerfulness that she has, just dragging. I just like seeing her on the screen. So those are some of my favorite scenes. That was one of my favorite scenes in this show. That being said, anything else we want to talk about before we close up shop here on the Instacast and get ready for our deep dive on Tuesday?
Just letting everybody know that Big D was courteous enough to get all of your emails that you wrote in for the last Telegraph onto the site. So they're all up right now if you want to check them out. I will be spending the remainder of my Sunday evening responding to all of them. So I think there's like 88 of them or something. So thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for robbing me of my Sunday night. But there's nothing I'd rather do than answer these. I get so excited to read all of them and get a kick out of responding.
Yeah, I apologize. I had been responding via our email saying, "Oh, great, great theory," and maybe a couple sentences after that, Raj, thinking that I was doing the right thing by responding to our fans that take the time out of their day to write us, and God bless you for doing that. The problem with that is when you reply, it gets auto-fed to our website. So I've been told that I can no longer respond via email. But if you want to see our responses, go to shatontv.com, look for Westworld Telegraph, and all the emails in their unedited versions will be there. You can comment, you can respond, you can look at your favorite theories, you can really fall down a rabbit hole. We post all of them there. So thank you so much for writing in.
Yeah, I've also created a tag, if you look under the posts, which is WW season 2 episode. So it'll be episode 01, 02. So you can go back and find the email you wrote in reference to whatever episode it was. But if we responded to an email directly, the conversation kind of ends there. But a lot of times by Gene going online and answering it there, you'll find 4 or 5 other people jump in, and it really helps the conversation continue.
We also love hearing your voicemails when you call into our Shat hotline, which is 914-719-SHAT. Those are actually, it's not transponded. They're
oh, Jesus.
What's the word
They're
I'm looking for?
transposed?
Transposed, thank you.
Transcribed, guys, transcribed.
Okay.
Yeah, they do try to transcribe the voicemails, but it does such a bad job. Google does that. They're almost incoherent. So
Okay.
they're not even worth posting.
They're not posting. Okay, got it. But you can call in. Listen, we love hearing really good voicemails, so keep calling in. Make sure you follow us everywhere on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. We're at Shat on TV. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search for Shat on TV Podcast. This concludes this week's episode of Shat on TV Westworld Instacast edition. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by any of those, be sure to leave a 5-star review. That really helps the podcast grow. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat the Movies, where you can vote on 80s and 90s movies that you want us to review and record a podcast about. You can check out all the information there at shatthemovies.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and Gene the Dragon Lions, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us on Tuesday for our Westworld Deep Dive episode. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time down here in Westworld.